Imagine paying $32 million for an ultra-luxury penthouse in Dubai Marina, only to realize your multi-million-dollar asset is slowly sinking into the Arabian Gulf. Welcome to the reality of the Al Maktoum Signature Tower, an $840 million architectural marvel that promised the ultimate billionaire lifestyle, but forgot one critical detail: the laws of physics. This isn't just another glass skyscraper. This is a 60-story spectacle engineered for the global elite. Here, you don't park your Bugatti in a basement. You drive it into a high-speed, patented super elevator, riding up alongside your vehicle 600 feet in the sky before stepping directly into your living room. The tower features 132 hyper-exclusive residences, bought by 22 different international billionaires. It was sold as an unshakable monument to human ambition, resting on what developers called an indestructible foundation: 149 massive engineering piles drilled 150 feet deep, capped by an 11,000 cubic yard concrete mat, one of the largest residential continuous pours the UAE had ever seen. But beneath the gold leaf lobbies and infinity pools, the ground is answering back. Satellite radar data has exposed a terrifying reality. The tower is sinking. On paper, it was designed like a massive table sitting on a solid slab. In reality, it was built on reclaimed coastal sand and porous marine limestone that behaves more like a sponge than bedrock. Caught between shifting tides and the crushing weight of hundreds of thousands of tons of concrete, the island is compressing. This is the dark side of Dubai's hyper-luxury boom. The engineering theater worked perfectly to justify the multi-million-dollar price tags, but the unglamorous mechanics buried in the dirt are failing. As the desert heat expands the glass and the sea shifts the sand, a slow-motion disaster is unfolding in plain sight. To understand how an $840 million masterpiece begins to drop into the earth, you have to look at the timeline of how Dubai Marina was pulled from the desert. The engineering wasn't an afterthought here. It was the entire sales pitch. When the excavators first broke ground, the site was nothing but a thin strip of reclaimed sand wedged between the artificial Marina Canal and the open sea. The timeline of construction was a masterclass in hyperspeed development. Geotechnical teams surveyed the plot, noting the standard coastal profile: layers of loose marine sand, highly compressible silt, and a deep bedrock made entirely of porous cavity-filled limestone. Knowing the ground was inherently unstable, engineers designed a fortress underground. First, they brought in heavy rotary rigs to drill 149 structural piles. Each pile was a massive 3 feet in diameter, punched down 150 feet into the earth to friction grip the deeper strata. Next came the crown jewel of the foundation timeline: the massive mat foundation pour. For 36 hours straight, a non-stop convoy of over 1,000 cement mixers choked the marina roads, dumping 11,000 cubic yards of specialized concrete into a dense grid of steel rebar. It was heralded as an unshakable engineering triumph, but when the tower reached its full 60-story height, the sheer crushing mass of the glass and steel triggered a subterranean phenomenon known as geotechnical creep. The loose sand grains trapped within the limestone matrix began to shift and compact under the immense pressure. Worse, the groundwater table, which fluctuates constantly with the Persian Gulf's tides, began washing through the porous stone, destabilizing the sand beneath the massive concrete mat. The standard engineering models assumed the building would experience minor shilsel settlement during construction and then completely stabilize. They were wrong. Precision satellite radar monitoring has revealed that the Al Maktoum Signature Tower didn't stop moving. It is actively riding the compressing sand layers downward, sinking ceilingly year after year, long after the developers handed over the keys and cashed their checks. This isn't an isolated case of an unlucky foundation. It's a systemic design crisis cutting straight across Dubai's most expensive real estate. Over the last 2 decades, the emirate traded its low-rise coastal dunes for a dense wall of branded mega-towers. Look at the marina and downtown skylines today: Armani, Cavalli, Fendi, and soon Bugatti and Pagani, all packed tightly on a fragile, reclaimed ground. And across these hyper-luxury projects, the geotechnical data reveals an uncomfortable pattern of denial deep within municipal archives. Early geotechnical safety reports for multiple mega-projects warned that standard calculations were vastly underestimating how much these massive structures would settle. Developers kept drilling deeper. Some piles now reach depths equivalent to a 20-story building turned upside down. Yet the soil reports still came back with the same conclusion. Settlement was significantly higher than predicted. The warnings were hidden right there in the paperwork. The skyline kept climbing anyway. Just down the road in Business Bay, approvals sailed through for towers pushing into the 700 and 800-foot range, driven by a real estate machine that simply refuses to slow down. Then came the definitive satellite data that exposed the true scale of the crisis. Using advanced INSAR radar technology, orbital satellites bounced signals off the roofs and balconies of Dubai's coastal high-rises over a multi-year period. The system is so precise it catches ground movements smaller than a fingernail. The data confirmed that dozens of luxury coastal towers are actively sinking. Most dropped between 2 and 8 centimeters, with the Al Maktoum signature tower sitting right at the dangerous top of that range. Crucially, the data proved that nearly 70% of the newest luxury towers built along the waterfront are failing to stabilize. The standard industry assumption that a tower settles early and stops has been completely debunked. Years after the master developers wrapped up construction, these glass giants are still going down. When you stack millions of tons of concrete onto a sponge-like layer of marine limestone, the ground eventually demands its receipt. And right now, the entire luxury coastline is starting to pay. While developers celebrate billion-dollar sellouts, the human cost of this engineering gamble is playing out behind closed doors. Meet Michael, a British hedge fund manager who poured $14 million into a mid-tier penthouse in the tower. For the first 2 years, it was paradise. Then, the subtle signs of structural strain began to emerge. It started with a master bedroom door that suddenly refused to latch. Within months, hairlines and cracks snaked across his Italian marble floors, and a persistent, rhythmic creaking sound echoed through the walls during high winds. The sound of a 60-story tower straining against its own uneven foundation. What Michael is experiencing is the nightmare scenario engineers dread most: differential settlement. If a building sinks completely straight, the structural integrity remains largely intact. But that's not what's happening on this unstable coastal sand. One corner of the massive concrete mat is compressing faster than the other. The building isn't dropping uniformly. It is imperceptibly tilting and twisting, placing immense unpredicted stress on the upper structural columns. The consequences inside the units are disastrously unglamorous. Across the tower, residents are whispering about warped floorboards, shattered balcony glass blamed on the heat, and a growing epidemic of ruptured utility pipes buried behind pristine drywall. Worse still is the legal and financial trap snapping shut around the homeowners. Under UAE property regulations, master developers are generally hands-off once the initial structural liability windows close, leaving the newly formed owners' associations completely on the hook. When Michael and his neighbors demanded answers, they discovered a gaping hole in local real estate law. While sellers must disclose known material defects like a leaking roof, there is absolute no statutory requirement to disclose complex satellite-derived subsidence data to prospective buyers. The multi-million-dollar owners found out their building was sinking not from an official disclosure, but from leaked engineering reports. Now, the Owners Association is facing a catastrophic financial reality. This isn't a routine maintenance issue covered by standard reserve funds. Repairing structural twisting, reinforcing subterranean piles, and constantly patching stressed utility lines requires specialized engineering interventions. The resulting special assessments are projected to run into the millions of dollars per owner. The billionaires who bought the top floors can absorb the blow, but the expat investors who stretched their portfolios to buy into the dream are watching their ultimate status symbol transform into an unsellable, draining liability. Zoom out from the marina, and you realize this isn't just one bad building. It's a warning flare for the entire future of Dubai's ultra-luxury coastline. The geology is doing exactly what coastal geology does under immense weight. The terrifying part is how the system responds. While regional authorities enforce strict structural codes and push for modern building standards, a critical blind spot remains. There is still no legal mandate requiring developers to monitor long-term ground subsidence or track satellite data before launching the next mega project. Instead, the marketing machine simply moves down the road. Right now, the very same developers are building the sequel, the next tallest oceanfront residential tower in the world, boasting an even larger foundation slab, more car elevators, and a projected $1.2 billion sellout. It is being poured onto the exact same sand, over the exact same porous marine limestone. The immediate safety of these buildings isn't the core issue. The towers aren't going to collapse tomorrow. The real crisis is the 40-year horizon. As the ground keeps moving a few millimeters at a time, it eats away at the building's internal systems. Extreme desert heat expands the glass facades, while shifting foundations warp the structural frames, creating a compounding cycle of structural fatigue and underground water leaks. When the massive maintenance bills for these slow-motion engineering failures finally come due, they won't land on the developers who collected their billions and broke ground on the next project. They will land squarely on the owners who bought into the dream long after the glossy brochures were printed. A desert luxury boom, the spectacle always arrives first. The ground tells the truth later. If you want to track the hidden structural costs behind the world's most ambitious mega projects, hit subscribe. We take part at the engineering, the money, and the risks nobody wants to talk about.